can maximize the amount of questions we can get during the time that we have with the governor here in Philadelphia. One word of note, if we have anyone that's childish and tries to disrupt this conversation with the governor tonight, you will have to leave. And we'll restate that, and we will be rigorous about that. So Governor, with all those things put aside, toughest question of the night, most controversial, you're here at the Art Museum. Listeners and people in the audience who are not should know that your wife is somebody who's on the Art Museum board. So I've been given this question by the highest source. Most controversial question of the night. Not photo ID, not Penn State, not any of that. The #1 artist of the 20th century, Picasso or Matisse? Think, Governor, long and hard.
Can I call her first?
Yes, you may call your wife in on this. That is a lifeline. We'll give you 30 seconds to reach her.
I'm not sure she'd agree with this, but I would pick Picasso.
Any reason why? Remind you of the legislature?
Are there any legislators here? No, I just, of the pieces that I've seen, I tend to enjoy his more. That's simple.
All right. Governor, you're in Philadelphia today, and I guess late yesterday, the state Supreme Court on one of the vital issues, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania has become the center of the universe on photo ID, which you and I have talked about a number of times. Your thoughts on the state Supreme Court essentially punting this by a 42 vote, 1 Democrat, 3 Republicans, back to the lower court with the election clock ticking away on voter ID?
Well, the election's, 49 days away.
It was counting.
Anybody that's running for office right now is counting, trust me. And all of us watching television are counting. And it would have been nice if they would have made the decision. They've decided in their infinite wisdom that they needed more information. They sent it back to the Commonwealth Court. Judge Simpson, I think, is scheduled a hearing for Tuesday, I believe is the date now that I was told earlier today, to take some more testimony, to see if there's been enough time, and to see if the procedures have been out there that he feels are adequate and constitutional under the laws of the United States and in Pennsylvania. And then he'll make his decision. I'm sure that will go back to the Supreme Court, and they'll make a decision before November the 6th.
Now, when you and I have talked, though, in public statements, you think this is a rather simple matter, and you see this level of complication in the state Supreme Court. I think Judge Simpson had a 77-page ruling on this. Tom Corbett, as governor and as former prosecutor and as a lawyer, why do you see this as a relatively simple matter, despite the national outcry, really, around Pennsylvania?
Well, I firmly believe that if you look at surveys that have been taken, the people of Pennsylvania wanted this law, and the legislature passed it. That's number one. Number two, the vast majority of people have some form of photo ID, and we've made the law, or they have made the law, and I signed it, ones that accept driver's license, accept school ID if it has a expiration date to it, accept a passport, accept I'm trying to think, a military ID. There's a couple other forms. We've done everything we can to try and make this available to everybody. But the other reason is this law was passed and signed in, I believe, the end of March. There has been plenty of time between then and now, and going into the November election, to get that photo ID. What's interesting is it has spurred people to, I think, get registered to vote, and that's good. And two, then to get the photo ID, it has spurred interest groups in helping people get the photo ID and get out there to vote. So contrary to what people were saying about the effect on the election, I think it's going to get more people out to vote. I believe in getting people out to vote. I hope they vote the way I believe, but if they don't, they don't. But I really think that we need to have more participation, but we need to show who we are when we go into that polling place.
Talking about coming out to vote, presidential politics, there will be a poll coming out tomorrow, a Susquehanna poll that I'm aware of, and I think you may be, that indicates that Governor Romney is essentially a percentage point behind in Pennsylvania, much different than some of the other polling that we've seen. We've all seen Romney's videotape where he talked about 47% of people not paying federal taxes. Your thoughts on what he was trying to get at and how you see that playing out in Pennsylvania, Governor?
Well, first off, there's only one poll that matters, and that's the one that's on November the 6th. And we see polls, depending upon the pollster, it varies from, it's close, it's far apart. I believe it's very close. My poll is I talk to people. And I talk to people, Republicans, Democrats, Independents. I don't know whether they're registered to vote or not vote, whether they will vote. But what I understand from them is there's a great deal of concern about the direction of this country in the last 4 years. This country, the vast majority of people, I don't believe, can say that they are better off today than they were 4 years ago. And as I will face in 2 years, an election for a re-election is basically a referendum on did you do a good job? And I don't think that there people feel comfortable that the President occupant of the White House, President Obama, really has done a good job for the interest all across the board of not only Pennsylvanians, but for the entire United States.
Let me turn it around to you. Only 2 years in, it seems like a lot more given all that we've seen. Tom Corbett, how would you put yourself in that position about the job you've done so far, what you've tried to do? If you were making that pitch, if this were getting closer to the election,
well,
what is it
if
you've
I
done?
relied upon the polls, everybody would go, my goodness, what's going on? But you can't rely upon the polls. You can't govern looking at the polls. If you rely upon governing by looking at polls, you're not going to get done the job that you said you would do. And I think if people sat down today and looked at the promises I made during the course of the campaign, where I said that we would get fiscal sanity back into Harrisburg, we would bring common sense to Harrisburg, we would get a balanced budget done on time, we would not spend beyond our means. We've accomplished that 2 times, 2 years in a row. And I think that's very important. Now, I understand, it's hard. But we had been spending out of control. People became used to money that came from the federal government, spending beyond our means, borrowing beyond our means. And the way I looked at it when I was running for office, and the way I still look at it today, is I look at the future. I see a young little baby there. She's probably only 6 or 8 months old. What's her future going to be if we continue to do what we have been doing? And so when you say, look, we're going to prune back that bush of spending, it kind of looks ugly. But then it can grow back the way it needs to grow back with controlled growth. I believe we're in the right position for what we have been doing and keep our spending under control to see the economy in Pennsylvania start to turn around. Today, what we did in the Philadelphia Energy Solutions, taking the Sunoco facilities, and we tore the sign off to show the Philadelphia Energy Solutions. Thousands and thousands of jobs were saved in Pennsylvania. And why? Because there was a company, there was an investment company outside of Pennsylvania that said, we believe we can do better in Pennsylvania. We believe that the business climate of Pennsylvania is improving, and we can help those workers. And one of the things that we should look at, in the last 6 months, I've participated in 3 or 4 events where bipartisanship broke out. And when I say bipartisan, it's not just political bipartisan. I've been on the stage with Republicans and Democrats, but with labor and industry. All 4 categories together saying, we can do better for the people of Pennsylvania. I think that's what the people want. I think that's what they want in Washington. But if you look at the capitals around the states, of the various states, you look at the Republican governors, they're trying to bring that fiscal sanity back. And it's not easy to do.
Let's talk about the not easy part, though. What gets in the way? Because obviously people put you into office and you're following through on what you did. The email, we suggested listeners send us email questions. As you can see, this is a pretty long one. This is a guy I know is very conservative and a fan of yours. And he asked this question, though. He said, ask the governor, can't be here tonight, I think he has a birthday party. I said, that's no excuse. But ask the governor, why is it with a Republican legislature up and down the line, and Corbett committed to this, we hear him every month on your show, why don't we have vouchers, charter schools, liquor store privatization? Why don't we have any number of those things?
Well, let's back up. We do have charters. I think we need to get them reformed. We have the scholarship opportunity grants now. Some people would equate that to vouchers. We have the education income tax credit. We expanded that. We are starting to make those changes. We may not, they're just as in the Republican Party, there is in the Democrat Party a spectrum within there, from a moderate to a liberal to a conservative side within that. Well, if I look at my Republican legislature in the House and the Senate, I see that. they are not always going to agree on everything. There's not lockstep on everything. And you have to work through that. That's why I go back to the bipartisanship. The credit, the manufacturing resource tax credit, that deals with the use of natural gas and keeping it in Pennsylvania and using it for manufacturing in Pennsylvania, that was derided by the papers in the very beginning, and maybe because we didn't put it out there the correct way, has now been accepted as a performance-based tax credit that was supported bipartisan, labor, industry, Republican, Democrat. We need to be able to do more of that.
Governor, tomorrow you and I will be at the Shale, the Marcellus Shale Commission. They're holding a coalition. They're holding their hearing here, their convention in downtown Philadelphia. Interesting, there's an audience here. And the Marcellus Shale thing has taken off. I think they're opening in Bucks County their first natural gas, a place where people can go for that. I read these stories across the state. But here in the Southeast, we don't see the wonders of places like Bradford County, low unemployment, in a godforsaken place where there's nothing much else happening. Talk about Marcellus Shale and the battle you've had back and forth over that.
Well, first off, I think we can all agree that natural gas is a better form of energy than regular gasoline. It's cleaner. It's going to power your cars. It's powering the electric turbines. It is creating cheaper energy.
Poisoning water.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll disagree with that. But I accept you say that. I disagree. Can I move on? Okay. So it's clean. Okay. This industry, this gas in our land here in Pennsylvania and around the country, is going to give us the ability to be energy independent of the Mideast. We are now in Pennsylvania a net exporter to the other states of natural gas rather than an importer. It is lowering our energy prices here in Pennsylvania so that other companies are going to be able to provide more jobs for people or come to Pennsylvania because they have cheaper energy in Pennsylvania than they do in other places. If you look at across the state where the growth of the natural gas is, you will see people from southeastern Pennsylvania up in those fields working. Sometimes they might be welding, other times they might be engineers, other times they might be delivering different types of goods and services up there. So this has boosted the economy of Pennsylvania. We've created, the industry has created, direct and indirect, I believe over 75,000 new jobs in Pennsylvania in that industry. And it's in the private sector, it's not in the public sector. Those aren't taxpayer dollars going to that, those are the private sector dollars going to it. The most important thing is, it is a future source of energy for this country to run on. The most important thing I think we need to do is be energy independent. I know President Obama has talked about it, Governor Romney is talking about it, I have been talking about it. The sooner we become energy independent.
New prison!
No way! Reinstate GA! New prison! No way!
Okay, everyone.
Reinstate GA!
Education, not incarceration!
Please sit down or you will be
Prison!
removed.
No way!
Please sit down beside the scale, please. Please sit down or you will be removed. You've had your opportunity. You've made your point. Please sit down.
Fund education, not incarceration. Fund education, not incarceration. Fund education, not incarceration. Fund education, not incarceration.
Would you just shut up?
New prisons!
No way! Reinstate GA!
New prisons!
No way!
Reinstate GA! Fund education!
Not incarceration!
New prisons!
No way!
Reinstate GA!
Where are the cops?
Okay, kids, time to go home.
be removed. You are out of order.
What about if she grows up and she needs a doctor and she can't get any medical assistance? What about, I mean, what is the future going to be like if we keep doing what we're doing? That's your
adult
question.
basic.
And you call Bradford County God-forsaken country. That's God's country. I've been there. Yeah.
I apologize to the adults in the room. You're seeing what we face in Philadelphia every day. I apologize. We'll continue with the governor when the children are finally removed. Officers, would you come down over here to this corner so that we can proceed? Officer, over here, please. Thank you. Right here, officer, please move. Officer, this guy is way out of line. Get him out of here, please. Thank you.
Turn around and have to stop them because they don't have the money to pay for their medical care, or to pay for the house.
Excuse me, officer, down here in front, please. Right here, the governor, officer. Excuse me, right here.
Oh my God.
Thank you very much. Good night.
That's what that end of the spectrum does.
I apologize to everyone for these displays. We'll continue our conversation with the governor now. Governor, thank you very much. We will be taking questions from the audience. I'll be coming around with an index card so we can get in as many questions as possible. That will be coming up. And we'll ask the governor those questions in due time from the audience at this town hall. There's no need to act in the manner that we've seen. It accomplishes nothing. You will be removed for those disruptions. So keep that in mind. If you have a legitimate question, those questions will be asked of the governor. Governor, let's talk about this issue that sometimes the Inquirer and Daily News seem to give us false information, to put it mildly. This notion that you are about building prisons, not schools. Incarcerate, don't incarcerate, educate, this type of approach. Talk a little bit, if you would, about the prison budget under Tom Corbett and the education funding, not cuts, but the strategy that you've had around public schools across the state.
First off, when it comes to the corrections budget, if you look at last year's budget and this year's budget was flatlined. There was no increase over the year before. The year before was a modest increase, and those increases were due to increases in salaries that were mandated by unions and so forth, union contracts. Secretary Wetzel, John Wetzel, is a very strong leader of the Department of Corrections in trying to save as much money as we possibly can from the corrections budget so we can spend it in other areas. When it comes to the construction of prisons, not only have I not added new prisons, I've stopped the building of prisons. There was a prison that was scheduled under Governor Rendell out in Fayette County that was not built. Now, I know that many of you were upset about or commenting here about the prison that is better known as Graterford. A prison that was basically falling apart, was in the process before I came into office of being rebuilt to meet the needs of the prison population. Part of our problem is we have a big prison population, and I'll get to that in a minute. But when we took a look at the issues with that prison, there were security issues that Secretary Wetzel had, and we decided to pull the project, redo it, and what he recommended to me was to make it a little bit larger so that we could create a section of that for women prisoners who are in Pennsylvania that are from the southeastern part of the state, because we only have 2 other women prisons and they're nowhere near southeastern Pennsylvania. The concept about that was that these individuals, as they get closer to their time to get out of prison, if they're in for long term or even for a few years, that they would be closer to where the community is that they're going to go back and reintegrate to. And that if they have family members or friends in that area, that they would be able to come and visit. I think it's a very healthy concept. I think it's a very good idea that we added that additional facility for the women prisoners in that section of Graterford. So that's where we are. The prisons that are up and running, or we're finishing up one more prison, these were all designed and began under Governor Rendell, not under me. Now, let me talk about education. When people say that, I don't believe in education, quite the opposite. Right now, 40% of the budget, 40%, take out your dollar and rip it almost in half. 40% of every tax dollar that you spend, you're sent to the state or sent to the county, sent to the state, excuse me, goes to education in Pennsylvania. Now, I know some of you may not believe it, but those are the facts. 40%. Right now in Pennsylvania, over $9 billion goes to K through 12. It is the highest the state funding has ever been in the history of Pennsylvania. Now, back in the Rendell administration, for 2 years, they took federal money, moved state money out, put federal money in there. We don't have that federal money. That was stimulus money from the Obama administration. That is gone. So we have used our state money, put it back in, and increased it to the highest level it has ever been in. What I believe in education is this. We need, I want, a quality education for every child in Pennsylvania at a price that is affordable to the taxpayers of Pennsylvania. That's the goal. You may not agree with me. You may agree with me with the way we get there. But rest assured that I believe in education because I believe, having been the chairman of the Commission on Crime and Delinquency, I would rather prevent people, and education is one of the best ways, from going into the prison system, becoming clients of the state, than going into the system and having to fight that system even when they're out.
Thanks, Governor. Governor, for the audience now, we'll start with some audience questions from Fred Donnelly. Thank you, Fred, for the question. With fuel prices rising continuously, how aggressive is the state in pursuing the drilling for gas in Marcellus Shale? And he wants to know something we haven't talked a lot about, the infrastructure to deliver that product and convert the industry to natural gas. What's going on with that?
Well, the state doesn't do the drilling. And it's the companies who have gone out there and they have leased the properties or leased the rights from property owners across Pennsylvania. Let me stop right there also. One of the beneficiaries of all that leasing are the farmers of Pennsylvania, who have had a very difficult time over the last 10, 15 years. And if they happen to be on Marcellus Shale, they are now getting revenues that they can continue farming. They don't have to lose the farm. They can get new equipment, and that has had a stimulating effect. Buying new equipment helps the equipment manufacturer, helps the seller of that.
30 dairy farms have closed in Bradford County in the last 3 years.
Well, and we're trying to stop that. Okay, you know how we're trying to stop it?
How about a farm bill? How about a farm bill?
We are trying to, one of the ways to try and stop that is we passed this year,
A farm
the
bill.
legislature passed the end of the inheritance tax on the family farm. That's going to save a number of those farms. Now, when it comes to the drilling is going on, but there's not as much drilling going on right now as there was a couple years ago, because the price of natural gas, especially the dry gas, is considerably lower than it was when this all began. In the meantime, though, and the rigs, some of the rigs have left. In the meantime, though, you have to have the gathering systems. You have to have the piping that goes from the location where the drills are to the processing plants, and from there into the various pipelines, wherever that gas is going on. That is part of what is creating a great deal of employment throughout Pennsylvania. One of the things and one of the occupations that we have in short supply in Pennsylvania are welders across Pennsylvania. And frankly, if I can go back to education for a moment, I created a post-secondary education commission to report to me in November. And one of the reasons I call it post-secondary is it's after high school, but isn't necessarily college. What do we do there? And we have, I believe, in the last 20 years, kind of lost the emphasis. The trades are good. We need them. I'll give you an example. 25% of the building trades membership right now is 55 or older. What are we going to do to replace those? So I'm looking at how we, the state, can encourage the development more of the trades to have good sustaining jobs. It goes, and this doesn't get fixed overnight. It doesn't grow overnight. This is a long growing season that's going to take place.
Let's talk about that, and maybe even some of the people in the room. Student loan debt, something you and I talk about a lot. Penn State in the news, particularly when we first met you and started to talk with you on Talk Radio 1210. We were talking about this, and you just mentioned other career choices. Seems as if a lot of college students have $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in debt, and they're an art major. No offense to the art museum where we are. But, how many people can you have that are in these fields where there is a limited amount of space that are being churned out by colleges and with that kind of debt?
Well, let's talk about a field that we know a lot of people are. Teachers.
Right.
Okay? Right now in Pennsylvania, we educate an average of 12,000 teachers a year in all the schools, in the private schools, the state-related schools, and the state system schools. We have on average 3,000 vacancies a year. Okay? 1 in 4 have a chance of getting a job in Pennsylvania teaching. Now, I was a teacher, and it is a great profession. But I certainly would hope that somebody would have told me if I was going to make teaching my lifelong career, that I only had a 1 in 4 chance of staying in Pennsylvania. That hasn't taken place. I'm telling them right now. Now, do I want to see teachers? Absolutely. But we have to be honest with these kids. We have to be honest with them in other areas. And that's why I have kind of pushed the state relates and the state system to keep their costs, to keep their tuition down. They get upset about it. We need more money. We need more money. Well, that money is not my money. It's your money. It's taxpayers' money. And we have to control our costs. They cannot be recession-proof. And what happens is you have seen in past years tuition go up. Now this year, the state system is keeping their tuition, because I keep pushing this, down to about a little over 3%. Penn State, I think, is going to be a little bit about 3.8. I want to give it. You got any Temple grads here? Okay, because Temple did the right thing. They have no tuition increase at all this year. They understand. This is. I'm doing this because I believe we need to make education affordable to the students. But we also need to give them occupations. Frankly, I think some people are put into schools or pushed into colleges that would be better in a trade school. And I'll give you a prime example. There's a college not too far from here. It's a 3-year college called Stevens Tech over in Lancaster. Many of the students there are graduates of 4-year programs, didn't find the jobs that they wanted, didn't find anything that made them happy, good with their hands, good with engineering, went back there, and they're getting a 3-year degree, and they're coming out doing very, very well, and there's a high demand for their skills in carpentry or bricklaying or woodworking or whatever. So we have to take a look at it. It's not automatic that college is the right thing to do. It is for some, but not others. But again, I mean, I'm not going to pick on the art students in here, in this one. My wife was a music major when I met her. But we have to think about education for the 21st century, not the 20th century.
Governor, another question from the audience. In light of the whole Sandusky matter, all that went on with this, how can you sign the death warrant for Terry Williams, the man who I believe is scheduled to be executed October 3rd, in light of the alleged abuse he suffered at the hands of the men that he killed?
First off, you have to understand that law under Pennsylvania is that the governor, if given a death warrant and not receive a request for clemency from the Pardons Board, you have the two options. One, you sign the death warrant. You have a certain number of days in which to sign the death warrant. The law was changed about 12, 15 years ago that required the governor to sign it. If the governor does not sign it, then the Secretary of Corrections is required to sign it. So the next avenue is an issue that is before the Pardons Board, and there is an issue, I think, going in front of Judge Sarmina hearing Common Pleas Court tomorrow, I believe. She's having another hearing because much of what we're hearing now about the abuse is new. I'm not going to go into the credibility of it one way or the other because I don't know. The Board of Pardons had a hearing on clemency. It has to be a 5-0 vote to recommend clemency. It was a 3-2 vote to recommend clemency, so it wasn't universal. So it's not come to me at this point.
Governor, another question, a follow-up question. Excuse me, sir, please. We're taking audience questions. Excuse me. If you continue, you will be removed. That's the first warning. You'll be removed. Excuse me, you'll be removed now. Please remove him. Please remove him now. Officers, take him out of here. We're not going to continue this type of nonsense back and forth. Right here. I'll wait until he's removed. Thank you. Would you get up and leave? And thanks for doing that. Nice round of applause for him leaving on his own. Nice round of applause. Thank you.
Governor, you're a Catholic. I'm a Catholic. You cannot put another man to death.
All right. First warning.
God bless you. God bless you.
First warning.
Please do not do it, sir. Please.
Excuse me.
The bishops ask you. The bishops talk to you.
We have a question from the audience around that. I'm going to ask Governor, this brings up a question I think that everybody in office faces. Your religion, you're a Catholic. The question is, as a Catholic, we share the respect for sanctity of life and the church teachings around us. How are you able then to sign the death warrant for Terrence Williams, who's scheduled to be executed October 3rd for killing the man who raped him as a boy? Will you commute this sentence? If not, what will you tell St. Peter at the pearly gates? I'd add to that, this whole issue, we talk about your religion. How does that play into public life? How do you separate, or how do these things play into any decision that you make?
Interrupting your own question.
Many years ago, as a young prosecutor, I was presented with the decision I had to make on my own when I was trying a case against an individual in Pittsburgh who killed a police officer, shot him through the heart. And it's one that I prayed quite a bit about because I had to ask for the death penalty. And made a decision that I could live with that. I believed in it and made that decision. Now, ultimately, that did not happen. He convicted, got the death penalty, but the court overturned the penalty portion of it for reasons unrelated to this. I think about that quite often when I sign these warrants. I am required by law to sign these warrants. 12 people in a jury made a determination to unanimously, beyond a reasonable doubt, as to that decision, that this person has forfeited their life. I know at some point in time when I pass on, I will be judged on this, but this is the decision that I made.
Wow. Thank you, Governor, very much. Next question from the audience, Governor. In the event of President Obama's re-election, how is the state preparing to comply with the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare? What have you done along these lines? And I would add, we get questions from listeners saying, why set up any kind of movement toward the exchange? Isn't that helping something that you've been on record opposing?
Well, let's start at the beginning. We received money from the federal government to start looking at the process in case we go that way, okay? And it's just basically getting our house in order and exploring all the possibilities, because there's a great deal of technology that would have to be employed and so forth. We have continually, since the decision was made by the Supreme Court, continually asked Secretary Sebelius for clearer guidelines as to what they intend to do. We have yet to receive them. We have been reading and getting different messages from the department as to how this would be implemented. The process we're going through right now is we're looking at, can Pennsylvania afford it? It's a great deal of money that we would end up paying over the many years thereafter, because in the short term, there's a couple of years that the federal government's going to pay for it, and then it is going to continue to be pushed back to the states. The decision has not been made yet. Obviously, the election could have a great deal to do with it. If the president were not to win and Governor Romney were to win as president, we have a different set of circumstances. So we're going through that process. We have time to take a look at it. That being said, do I believe we need some health care reform? Yes, I do. I think we do need portability. I think we do need to take a look at pre-existing conditions and have it across the country. But I think we need to do it in bills that the people can read, that the legislators can read, in shorter bills, rather than a bill that I had one individual tell me they tried to read it and it took them weeks to try and get through the bill. Legislation that Speaker Pelosi literally said we have to pass it in order to know what's in it is never good legislation, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Governor, a question that's a long-term one, and you've talked about it, and it's something that many people have put off, previous governors. This from Bob Devine. Please discuss how the contributions are made to public sector pensions, specifically the teachers' pensions, and the difficulty in meeting these obligations going forward.
Let's talk about the pension problem first, and then we'll go back into it. Right now in Pennsylvania, you have the state teachers, the teachers in Pennsylvania, their pension system, and then you have the state employees' pension system. The combined contribution that the state has to make to those two pension systems last year's budget was $1.5 billion out of a $27.245 billion. We had to add in another $500 million, so that went to $1.6 billion out of now a $27.6 billion budget. Why do we have to do that? Because we did not, as a state, as school boards, as legislators, as administrators, however you want to put it, over the years, contribute the way they should have to be fiscally sound. Back in 2002, 3, somewhere in there, I think it was, and don't hold me to the date, the legislature passed an increase in the multiplier to the state teachers, to the state employees, each of 25%, and to the legislators of 50%. All that while they were not funding at the level that they should have been funding, because the stock market was doing good. And they all looked at it and said, stock market's doing really well. We don't need to because we're fine. And as I am told, I pretty much believe this, when they were making their projections of how much money had to be in there, they made projections of a rate of return on investment that were rosier than a conservative estimate would have been. Very, very rosy, up to 10 and 12%. When the stock market went south and we had to crash, all those projections just came down on everybody. It's not just Pennsylvania. It's the municipalities in Pennsylvania. It's all the states in Pennsylvania where the pension system just got ahead of everybody. The other thing is we have people, pensioners, nobody anticipated this 30, 40, 50 years ago when they started doing this, that are way outliving the pensions that they thought they were going to. And that's part of the problem. That's, you know, the good problem is people are living longer, but the pension systems didn't anticipate that they would live longer. So there's a greater demand on the pension systems.
Governor, welfare to work is in national news. Governor Romney talking about President Obama relaxing the requirements. Some Republican governors allegedly asked for that relaxation. What's the governor's stance, your administration's stance on this issue of welfare, work, and who gets welfare and how that shakes out? What's the strategy?
Well, the number one strategy is try and get everybody a job so that they don't need to have welfare.
Yeah.
That's the number one strategy. A good job. I agree. A good job. Okay? But you have to get there. And it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. Okay?
Any job.
Okay? But I don't believe, I mean, if you look at where the reform to welfare to work came from, it was in the Clinton administration. And it was in the Clinton administration that they required people to go and work and look for work. And I think they should. We do not want a country that is an entitlement country, where more than 50% are entitled. It's getting close. It's getting close. So the goal is to try and create as many jobs as we possibly can. You may disagree, and people here may disagree on how we're going about that goal, but I think we share the same goal. I want to see people working. That really is my goal. It's that simple. You see what I'm doing down here with the refineries. I didn't want to see those people go on unemployment compensation. We're working to keep those jobs. If I could create jobs for everybody, we would. Okay? In the private sector.
Governor, let's talk about what has been the age-old quest for governors, and that is to privatize the state liquor stores, Liquor Control Board. Where does that stand in this lame duck session and then coming into 2013? And talk a little bit, you have some time, sometimes we don't have the radio maybe, about the complexity of this, of how difficult it is to sort out what would seem to be a layup. I would think everyone in the room would like to go and get a bottle of wine, a glass, a six-pack of beer in one place, as they do in many other states. Why not do it?
Let's do a survey.
There we go. All right, Governor, you're in charge.
Go ready to participate in the survey?
I think we'll get unanimity on this.
How many of you would like to see, how many of you would like to see the state store system privatized so that you can go over, like you do in New Jersey or Delaware, to buy wine and liquor?
What about the job?
Okay?
What about the good rural Pennsylvania jobs for rural people where liquor stores are very few and they're the only jobs that we got?
You know, sir, I don't think we're going to agree on anything.
I'm sorry. My friends
Okay, let's just agree with that.
My friends work at Pike County at the liquor store, and it is
But
a good job.
let me, you know, I've been asked here to give you answers. You may not like them, but we're trying to do.
You're union busting.
Okay.
That's what you want.
No, we're not.
Yeah, you
No,
are.
we're not.
UFCW out. That's
These
what you want.
individuals will still have jobs. We are one of the
Not with
two
benefits.
states.
I worked at a beer store, sir. I worked at a beer store all through high school. They don't give you benefits. That's not a good union job like you get in the liquor store. I'm sorry.
Okay, we heard your point. Let the governor respond, please, Governor.
And we disagree. Okay.
Okay.
Now, we're one of two states that has a system like this. The rest of the country does not. Does not have it. We have already privatized.
Excuse me, Governor. Excuse me, sir. Sir, be quiet or you will be removed. Now, we've had the question. We're going to get an answer, okay? If you want to stay, listen to the answer. Thank you.
If you take a look at the system, beer is already privatized. Beer is already privatized because you can go in and you can buy a 6-pack of beer at a bar.
Right.
You can go in and buy a case of beer at a beer distributor like he worked at. The wholesale system is privatized because there are wholesalers for the different brands of beer all over. That's already privatized. What's not privatized is the liquor and the wine. And that is what's being taken a look at right now. There are proposals out there. With the remaining days of the legislature, talking to Representative Turzai, I don't know. I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no. I don't know that there's enough time to do something like that. When you ask what are the problems, because there's not a clear definition of how it would be done yet. And yes, the union is opposed to it. I understand it, and I understand why. But also, if it's the whole system, beer, wine, liquor, much of the interest on the beer side is opposed to it also because it threatens their licenses and the value of their licenses. I understand that. That's why I will talk with Representative Turzai. I believe if we're going to do it, and the majority of the people in Pennsylvania want that, then I think we need to privatize beer and wine, come up with that system, privatize wine and liquor, and on the beer side, leave that alone for a while, and let's get used to this system over here. It works in other states.
Governor, let me ask you, inside the legislature, are you saying that it's your opinion that the legislature, excuse me again, please. Excuse me, you're rude to the governor, and that is abysmal. You're not going to be rude to me. You are not going to be rude to me. The governor's a gentleman. I'll handle it. You're going to be quiet during this. We've had enough outbursts. So, ma'am, if you don't like it, hit the bricks. Get out. Otherwise, we're going to ask the questions. We're going to hear the answer, and you can respond by giving me your question. I'll take your question. Okay. Will somebody come and get her question, and we'll ask it in that manner, please. Okay, Governor, what I was going to ask you about this simply was, is it your sense that the legislature is on board to do this? And is it just the complexity that's holding up what we've heard about for 30 or 40 years? Or are there factions there that are still opposed to this for some reason?
Well, clearly there's factions that are opposed.
For what reason, though? What is it? Listeners ask me this all the time.
Well, you'd have to, I think a lot of it has to do with the union issue.
Okay.
The Democrats would not put up one vote. Okay, so, and we know that that's for the union issue. In regard to the Republican side, I think I brought up the confusion, the threat on the beer side, if beer is included.
Okay, thanks, Governor, very much. Let me go for another audience question here for your Governor. Governor, considering your cuts to general assistance, which have been in the news, health care for the poor, schools, especially in the poorest communities, combined with an increase in prison spending, would it be correct to say your administration is waging a war on the poor?
Absolutely not.
Sounds
First off, let's take a look at the premises of that question. Number one, have we increased the correction system? No.
Okay.
Said it? Somebody bring it here that I increased it. We have not. In fact, we're trying to control it. Number two, when it comes to the general assistance, yes, we had to, unfortunately, reduce the general assistance cash grant. We did not reduce the health care side of that. So the $200 a month was reduced. At the same time, what our people at the Department of Public Welfare have been doing with their clients is trying to find them other sources, other programs that would meet the needs that maybe they haven't been using at this point in time. So that's exactly
I'm a social worker. There are none. There's nothing else.
Governor,
What about adult
Let me
basic?
talk about something in the news that I'm going to talk about on my show tomorrow. Pew Research, and they're pretty reliable, I think, says that the suburban tax rate is coming awfully close to where I live in Philadelphia. Suburbs going up in state and local taxes. Philadelphia's at about 12.9 total. Suburban average is about 12.5. And some of them say it's the Corbett budget driving these local suburban areas to raise their taxes because they're not getting the money from the state.
Are you talking about on the school board side?
Yes.
Okay. By keeping the balance, the budget balance, by not increasing taxes, by even though we've increased our funding for education, which we have, people don't want to acknowledge that, but you just have to go look at the numbers.
But wait a minute, let's talk about the website, and let's hope the media covers this tonight as we do on the show. Give the website, because I don't think I've ever seen it in the other media. There's kind of a media blackout. The website where people go, they can take a look at their school district, they can see the budget, and they can see the increase rather than the cuts.
Did Governor Corbett increase it?
First off, the website is www.pa.gov. You go onto the governor's website, you go into the education section, and there is a listing there for every school district in Pennsylvania, and to show what they received last year, what they received this year in the various categories. It also shows the pension issue. It also shows the average salary for teachers. Let me go through some of these numbers, because I want to make sure that I get the right number, since everybody doesn't think I'm telling them the truth at this point. Okay? Since we took office, we've increased the state-supported public schools by more than $918 million. 10%. Okay? Now we have done that without increasing taxes.
Why are 40 schools closing in Philadelphia?
How are you able to do that without increasing taxes?
Well, because we're saving money. Bear with me. Bear with me. We're saving money in other areas. Okay? But what we have
closing schools.
Okay, Governor, go ahead one more time.
If we would have continued all the money that the schools wanted, the average taxpayer of Pennsylvania, family of 4, last year would have had an increased tax burden from Pennsylvania of $930. Excuse me, yeah, $930. This year, it would have been $1,230.
What about corporate taxpayers?
Governor, with that, Governor, we are going to conclude tonight's event. We're just asking you one more question. Just give us a sense, Governor. Give us a sense, Governor, as far as... Okay, you know what? You know what? Right here, remove her. Right there in the red. I want her removed. Wherever the officers are, I want her removed. We're going to finish this event. Remove her now, please. Officers, remove her. We're going to finish this event. Out. Please remove her. Would you come down and remove her?
Officer, remove the man on the stage!
We will finish this event.
Remove the man on the stage!
Raise the minimum wage.
You're keeping any black person out of the crowd, sir.
Okay, Governor, give us parting question, a sense of, as we look forward past the election into 2013, what's on the Corbett agenda for people here that want to know what we're involved in moving forward with Tom Corbett?
More prison. More lives.
Let's go! Union busting!
Tom, my job is to try and bring more jobs to Pennsylvania.
Good job!
The legislation that we are going to be working on will be aimed at increasing the ability of people to get, as you say,
Asthma.
jobs. I'm not going to go into the detail right now. I think I can waste my time.
Governor Corbett, thank you for coming tonight. A nice round of applause for Governor Corbett.